Now, they may be wearing racing flats. Well, that's not barefoot. I mean, Vibrant Five Fingers isn't barefoot. That's a quote-unquote barefoot or minimalist shoe. But a true barefoot runner who runs a whole marathon, you don't see them. There's a reason for that, I think. Is it the increased magnitudes of the forces on the foot? These guys are worried about getting injured when they're racing. Now, yeah, they're training barefoot, but getting a race situation where, I mean, there's a big difference between what you do in your training when you race. When you race, it's you know, you're going fast. I mean, when you're racing, that's the whole point of a race, is to go fast. And you're putting more force. Why not just wear a thin racing flat and protect your feet and go barefoot? For me, it was a no-brainer because I was always in shoes, so my feet were so tender, I wasn't good at running on anything barefoot other than sand and on grass. Is it the shorter stride length that barefoot makes you do? You know, when you're barefoot, you remember, all the research shows that barefoot running is done with shorter stride lengths. So the shorter stride length, maybe that's limiting your ability to lengthen your stride and go faster. I don't know. These are the questions I'm asking. We really don't know the answer. Or is it because all these guys are making thousands or maybe $1 million from the shoe companies who are paying them to wear the shoes? That's a valid question. You know, that's not, I mean, you're talking about guys from Kenya and Ethiopia who are probably making more per race than they would make in a whole lifetime from the shoe company, because they can bring that money back to their villages and support their families for a part and be very wealthy. They just can put on the shoes of the shoe company and run faster. So this is a valid argument for why the elites may be running in shoes. So, does barefoot running prevent or lessen injuries? Well, Chris McDougall sure said, and of course I'm the ankle podiatrist, what do I know? Chris McDougall said, oh yeah, we need to be running minimalist shoes or barefoot because that's what our ancestors did, that's what the Terra American Indians did, and look, they're not injured. Of course, they weigh 125 pounds. They're not the guys who sit at the desk and weigh 200 pounds and decide they're going to run a marathon by running a 10-mile run every weekend. You know, so no different body mass. No research. There's absolutely not one shred of research that shows barefoot running produces less injuries than shod running. However, there's also no research that shows that shod running or running in shoes produces less injury than barefoot. So we don't know. There hasn't been the prospective research. Prospective research means that we take a group of people and we separate them into barefoot and shod running. We let them run, and at the end of the study, we see who gets most injured. It's ahead, not looking at people who've been injured and say, okay, what were they doing? So this is what we need to do, and this is what is actually going to be currently done, but it's probably going to take 4 or 5 years to really get this answer. So, in summary, what does barefoot running do for us? It's going to result in you taking a shorter stride. It's going to make you run with faster step pattern or increased stride frequency. It's going to make you hit flatter instead of running on your heels. And it's also going to make you pre-activate your calf muscles in order to avoid heel strikes so you land on your forefoot. So it's going to put more load on the forefoot and less load on the rear foot. So, running injuries, are they going to be changed? Well, they may, but you're just going to be trading one injury for another. When you run on the heel strike pattern with a shoe, you're going to get one set of injuries. You run in minimalist shoes, you're going to get another set of injuries. You run barefoot, you're going to get another set of injuries. Because why? Because when you hit the ground and running, you're hitting the ground with 2 to 3 times body weight, whereas in walking, you're only hitting the ground with 1.25 times body weight. So when you run, you're hitting the ground twice as hard. And if you're 25 pounds overweight, that means you're hitting the ground 50 pounds higher with each step than if you were run with a normal body weight. Now I'm looking around the room here, I don't see guys who are fat, but when I'm at my office, I'm seeing a lot of guys and women who are running to lose weight. And why do we have this high injury rate? Well, I think that's a lot of it because Americans are heavier now than they were in the 70s. So I think that's a big deal. We know that barefoot running increases load rate on the foot, increases tibial vertebral accelerations. It increases load on the ankle, but decreases load on the knee. And it's also more metabolically efficient. So as barefoot running, this guy, if I'm ever going to do a barefoot race, I'm going to go as the other barefoot caveman. And Pat, are you going to start selling this? You going to start selling this in the store here now? So if they want to, this is a caveman outfit. He has a bow around his neck and everything. Man palm. So my opinion is that barefoot running is better. I think that it can be done. may be better for a few people, but the majority of the population being habitually shod with grown-up shoes is going to be a difficult transition. And if you're going to do it, go slow, find a soft surface, and use it maybe once or twice a week instead of every run. That'd be my opinion, because I don't want to see you guys get injured. Race results clearly show that the faster runners are wearing shoes, but we don't know why they're wearing shoes. We don't know if it's because they're getting money, or because they're worried about getting injured, or because they can take a longer stride. We don't know. And this barefoot running movement that I've been interviewed 7 or 8 times on, I've been interviewed for a book about running, I've been interviewed in the New York Times and Boston Globe on this, is that what I call it is a virtual movement. There's a lot of people talking about it, but you go to the races and you go to the running trails and you see very, very few people doing it here in Sacramento, where it's a warm weather climate, let alone a place like Montana or North Dakota in the winter. So, I think we're talking about it because it's a neat concept. I think people are running minimalist shoes, or racing flats as I call it, but you really don't see a lot of people doing it. A lot of people are talking about it. And
in high school, I definitely try and do some barefoot running after workouts, just jogging on the grass, strengthening your feet. I definitely feel like it has its time and place. With that said, I just urge people to be cautious with it, because our feet are not the same as Africans. We grew up wearing shoes on pavement, and we have pavement roads everywhere, So what I tell people is, just work into it slowly, because I have been around a lot of people who are like, oh, I love these shoes, they're so awesome, barefoot shoes, and then they are injured a week later. So you just gotta be cautious and let your feet adjust to that gradually. But my personal take on it, and this is just my opinion, I don't want to offend anyone out there, but it's just that the best guys in the world are wearing shoes and we're running fast. So until some barefoot dude comes by me at 26 miles, then maybe I'll look into it.
That pretty much sums up my, of course, I'm a little biased because I was a competitive runner. I'm not very fast now, but I was a competitive runner. That's the way I think. Obviously, there are those who go out to lose weight. There are those out to just get fit. And so those concerns of running off. And you guys, this Boston Marathon, 2:04:57. Oh, that's incredible. That's just unworldly to have these guys. And he was, I think, number 3 or 4 in the race? 4. He was, yeah, so they had the perfect conditions for this year's Boston. But anyway, so, I'm obviously a little bit biased because I ran in shoes, I ran fast in shoes, I ran barefoot also. I've been looking at, I've been a running shoe fanatic ever since I was a junior high school kid, seeing it from the 70s to now, seeing, what's at Fleet Feet, see what's in the runner's world. And I just want to caution you, if you're going to be, just don't jump on the train and get run over. I want you, if you're going to go and want to run in the Vibrams, or you're going to run barefoot, start slow. Don't hurt yourself. We see a lot of stress fractures occurring from the Vibrams and the Medfoot. So you've got to understand, it's a totally different style of shoes. And what we see is that the guys who can transition into the barefoot running the easiest are the guys that grew up barefoot. Maybe they're from Hawaii, or they maybe were. I did the Runner's World interview back in February of 2010 with this guy named Barefoot Ken Bob Sackton. He had grown up in the country, walking barefoot all the time. So his transition to barefoot running was easy because he grew up. Here, I grew up in Sacramento, and I would almost never walk on the asphalt or cement barefoot because my feet were sensitive. So I like shoes because they protect my feet. So, if you guys are barefoot people all your life, you may be able to run barefoot. I say go for it. Just be careful. But don't get caught up into the hype of the barefoot running thing. There's a lot of people who almost take it as a religion, that it's oh, I found this, I want you to find it too, whatever they're chanting. I actually don't understand this. I'm just concerned as a medical professional that you guys go on and run and have fun and run fast and do it in a way that, so you don't get injured, and just don't believe everything you read on the internet. So with that in mind, we can take some questions here.
So for those of us who are looking for something different from knee injuries, what do you suggest in shoes then?
Well, that's not an easy question, because knee injuries is, when you say a knee injury, that can be about 50 different things. So, is it an internal derangement? You got a bad medial meniscus, meniscal tear, congemalation patella, iliative band syndrome, peasants, precise. You know what I'm saying? Is that when I look at the knee injury as a sports podiatrist, I got to know which knee injury it is. So it's a little difficult to answer. However, first thing is, what I would do if I had a knee injury is, number one, try to find a softer surface to run on. Grass, all-weather track, treadmill with a nice spring to it, because anytime you decrease shock through the foot, that's going to decrease shock through the knee. Second thing is try differently. If you have a pronated foot, you may try one of the over-the-counter insoles. If you have a really pronated foot, you may have to try an orthotic. You may have to, there's just so many things. It could be taking stride lengths. I mean, I could look at your run and say you're overstriding, tell you to run differently, and your knee pain goes away. Strengthen the quad. So it's, shoe-wise, though, I would say try different shoes. So, I mean, don't be afraid to, the guys here at Fleet do a great job, but, I don't know any more than they do what shoe's going to work best for you. I have a good idea, but I'm not, all-knowing. So you may have to try different styles of shoes and just give them a go. So maybe buy a shoe, maybe try a shoe with a low heel and one with a more of a controlling, motion control shoe. But it's that's why when I have someone who asks me that question, I say, go see someone who knows sports injuries and let them evaluate you professionally so they can give you a good starting place. Because otherwise the options are so great that it's going to be difficult for you, especially if you're a new runner and a beginning runner, to know kind of where to go. Yes, back in the back.
I noticed in your presentation that barefoot running puts a lot of pressure on your calves and plantar. I've been diagnosed with plantar fasciitis, so I'm wondering, is that bad to put more pressure on my calves when I'm running?
Well, there's actually, some people say that barefoot running has helped their plantar fasciitis, and some people say it's caused plantar fasciitis. So, who knows? The Achilles tendon definitely takes a load. Anytime you go from a rear foot strike to a forefoot or midfoot strike, you're putting more load on the Achilles tendon and calf muscle. So I'd say definitely. That's our treatment. When we've got some of the Achilles tendonitis and calf strain, first thing we do is we give them a soft heel lift to put under the heel, because that takes a load, helps take some of the load off the Achilles tendon. So if you have plantar fasciitis, so that's a whole other story. If it's heel pain versus mid-arch pain, sometimes we try the inserts, orthotics, stretching the calf muscles, icing, and that sort of thing. But the plantar fasciitis is a very difficult thing to get rid of. Sometimes we tape the foot, so that's a whole other lecture in itself. But I don't think that if you're having heel pain, you just don't want to be running with a heavy heel strike. So, but at the same time, you could be running in a thin sole shoe and you get on your heel, you could cause the heel pain. See what I'm saying? So it's a very difficult question to answer.